So 3, 18, 19, and 20 is one cluster of statements that are closely related. 18 says, not knowing or delusion is heavier than other faults. Not knowing or delusion is heavier than the other faults. So yesterday, we have already started talking about this. So here, the other faults are referring to attachment and aversion, particularly, of course, all the other faults. But more directly, it's talking about out of the three poisons, which are the root poisons or the root faults or mental defilements, not knowing or delusion. So, by the way, not knowing and delusion, they are not exactly synonyms, although they have been used in various different texts interchangeably. They are not exactly synonyms. In that not knowing is, you could say, a passive kind of problem. You don't know. Delusion is an active kind of problem, meaning you're actively perceiving what something is. Something valuable you misperceive as not valuable. Something not valuable you perceive as valuable. So these are two aspects of this confused state of being. And we have these two as part of this root poison. So not knowing and delusion. So compared to attachment and aversion, not knowing or delusion is the more problematic one, is the more basic one, is the more fundamental. And so here it's said to be heavier than the other faults, as in the burden weighs more heavily than the other problems, the other mental defilements. And so here Khenpo Kunpal says, the source for all faults, such as desire, aversion, and so forth, is indeed the delusion of not knowing the nature of causes and results. So specifically, what kind of not knowing, what kind of delusion to be deluded about, to not know this principle of karmic causality, of causes and results. And therefore, not knowing what to adopt and what to abandon. Knowing what to adopt and what to abandon, virtue, causes of virtue to be adopted, non-virtue, and causes of non-virtue to be abandoned. This is very important to know clearly. Now, some of you, I'm sure, have read particularly these very, what's often said to be very profound, very amazing teachings, very advanced teachings, like in Mahamudra, Dzogchen, Zen, saying things like to be beyond abandoning and adopting. And even Kyobpa Rinpoche, in some cases, also use this expression, neither adopting nor abandoning. But that is talking about, such an advanced state of being. It's not talking about you should go about, neither adopting nor abandoning. Meaning neither adopting virtue nor abandoning non-virtue. If your practice, you say, oh, my practice is neither adopting virtue nor abandoning non-virtue, then what else is there to do, That is saying, I don't care whether it's happiness, and I don't care whether it's suffering. That sounds good, but is that true, When suffering comes, are you not affected? When things that are not agreeable turn up, are we not affected? No, we are affected. When people that are agreeable, that we like a lot, are no more, are we not affected? Very much affected. So when there are, statements like beyond adopting or abandoning, it's describing the result of carefully navigating what to adopt and what to abandon. The result of carefully, and then from carefully to habitually knowing what to practice and what to let go, what to follow and what to leave behind. The result of that is to be in a constant state of not needing to either adopt or reject, meaning it has become second nature. That you don't even need to think, oh, those things I should not do. Oh, those things I should do. Because you have so completely removed all the causes of suffering, all the behaviors that bring about suffering. It has become second nature. You don't even need to think. Just like it's second nature, when you see fire, you don't stick your hand in. And if you accidentally, because out of not paying attention, stuck your hand in, immediately pull out. So that, expression like, neither accept nor reject, neither, adopt nor abandon. They are not language of the path, as we would say. They are language of the result. Language of the ground, basis, so ground, path, and result. These are three stages, right? Ground meaning the basis. What is the ground of our practice? Language of the ground would be something along the lines of without beginning, without end. Meaning we need to understand, samsara and nirvana is without beginning and without end. That's the language of the ground. And what that means there is, from the perspective of the ultimate, everything is already as it is, including we are already Buddhists. But we are Buddhists that are nonetheless, confusion is covering, hiding our Buddha state. But when we remove mental defilements, it's not that we are improving Buddhahood. Right? And then all the mental defilements that keep growing, let's say, we let them grow. It's not that Buddhahood itself has been diminished. Just like they say, the analogy often uses, like the sun in the sky. Cloudy day and clear day has nothing to do with the sun. Cloudy day and clear day is only based on perception of the ones that are standing here. And between the one standing here and the sun, there are clouds or no clouds. So that's the language of ground. So we cannot confuse language of the ground to say, to take that and put it into the context of the path, meaning what we should practice. If we get too enamored, too excited with the language of the ground, it might undermine the path. In the context of the path, the language is clearly knowing what to adopt, clearly knowing what to abandon, and in order to do that, clearly knowing the principle of karmic causality. And therefore, if we have delusions, if we don't know this principle of karmic causality, then that is at the root of all the unhappiness, all the suffering that we experience. So here, as it is said in the sutra determining the Vinaya, requested by Upali, desire is a small fault, but difficult to part with. Aversion is a great fault, but easy to part with. And we already talked about this yesterday. Delusion is both a great fault and difficult to part with. So these are the three root poisons. So of the three, it says desire is the least faulty. Because in a way, desire is somewhat related to compassion. Desire is a misdirected behavior or a misbehavior. And misbehavior not in the ordinary sense of how we use the word, but a misbehavior as in a wrong way of trying to compensate for some kind of basic, you could say, nature, to want to connect with everything. If we look more deeply into what desire is the wrong course of action arising from, you could say, an innate sense of feeling and wanting to connect with everything, with everyone. But then, when we feel that we don't have that connection with everything and everyone in that way, we choose the wrong course of action, which means it turns into I want, in a way that turns into possessiveness. And then the more we are gripped by possessiveness, the more we experience not being able to possess. these things, these people, these situations, these objects. And then great frustration comes up. So to practice, to be beyond, to not be under the power of desire, especially from the perspective of Vajrayana instructions, it says that rather than simply see how heavy and how burdensome desire is, which is one of the important ways of helping us become more free from the power of desire, is to see how that desire can often be so heavy, so burdensome. And so then we let go. But there's another aspect to how to deal with desire, which is to recognize that already as it is, we are one, poetically speaking. We are already one with everything and everyone. And so there's no need to pull closer, to have closer. Yeah, I already have. The entire universe is already me. Don't need to go order it. Don't need to go get attention off. The satisfaction that I'm looking for, the bliss that I'm looking for is already here, available. No need to crave. The loneliness that I feel, the separateness that I feel, this is part of the delusion. There's no separation. So in the Vajrayana context of the five Buddha families, we say this is the Buddha Amitabha's principle. And Buddha Amitabha is the lotus family, is the desire family. It's working through desire with this understanding based on pure vision. So that's desire, And then aversion is Buddha Akshobhya's Vajra family. And then there's also ways of working through that. So aversion is a great fault. And then ironically, aversion is a great fault, right? Since I've kind of got distracted, so to say, and went in the direction of explaining the Vajrayana layer of how to relate to these poisons. Again, the basic layer of seeing aversion and the harm of aversion, that we have to continually get better and better at, so that then we let go of aversion as well. Not only let go of desire, but let go of aversion based on seeing how heavy and how burdensome, these mental defilements are, these afflictive emotions are. So that is the primary kind of way, primary approach that we should take. But then having that understanding, having that approach, and continuing to develop a determination to be free from aversion in that way, it also helps for us to gain some understanding of how Vajrayana talks about aversion. On the deeper level, how Vajrayana talks about aversion is that aversion, in a way, is connected to, again, something basic and innate to our nature, which is no matter how much suffering we experience, we never become completely okay with suffering. Which is to say, suffering is not our nature. I've used this example before. right? Or use this explanation. How do we know we have Buddha nature? And how do we know Buddha nature has no anger, no jealousy? Because when we experience anger, jealousy, in other words, when we experience suffering, no matter how much suffering we experience, we never get good at it. It's always uncomfortable. It's always difficult. It's always undesirable. Nobody taught us that, So this, in a way you could say, this inability to tolerate suffering is related to an inability to tolerate suffering as part of our nature. But again, because of delusion, the course of action that we take based on that nature, when we are confused, manifests as aversion. When you go, I hate this, I hate that, I don't like that, I'm really angry at this, I don't like that, it's all towards suffering. It's all because we cannot stand the unpleasant. And right? From a Vajrayana perspective, it says, this anger is from the Akshobhya Buddha family. And so, if we understand the mirror-like, if we have the mirror-like wisdom of Buddha Akshobhya, then we can see that, all these sufferings, all these annoyances, all these reasons that we just cannot stand, they are just like images, reflections on the mirror. They never get stuck on the mirror. They only arise, these reflections only arise temporarily. So to not be disturbed by the annoyances, the sufferings, is how we ultimately let go of aversion. The opposite of aversion, of anger, is what's called kshanti, or patience. And the definition of lack of patience is inability to accept what is. Inability to accept what is. So in this understanding, in this Vajrayana explanation, all the afflictive emotions have their root in something actually pure, pristine. But in that second moment, the moment after the experience of this pristine or pure nature, in that second moment, because of fundamental basic delusion, a wrong course of action, unfolds. That's how samsara is. The display of samsara manifests. This is a very, very long footnote. This statement isn't necessarily talking about all these things, just to be clear. So coming back to the statement, now, so delusion and not knowing is both a great fault and difficult to part with. Double whammy. So because of that reason, then that's why in statement 19, it says, since the animals are greatly deluded, such a birth is inferior. As in, we should understand that such a birth is perhaps what we want to avoid, even more than, wanting to avoid hungry ghost realm and hell realms. I know, a lot of us is like, but I love my animals. You have to continue to love your animals, okay? Yes, you know, this is not talking about, this is not judging them. This is telling us, don't make strange aspirations like, I wish I will come back as my dog. Don't make aspirations like that. You have no idea, right? A dog cannot, just think, a dog and a cat have no freedom whatsoever. It cannot even, right, pee and poop in the house as it wishes because it's locked in. And if it does that, then the owner, the daddy and the mommy, there's a problem. We need to solve this problem. It's like, no, the problem is you lock them in there with your love. And then the alternative, you're like, let them run around. No, let them run around. Cars will run over them. But here is about the psychology. Because in the cosmology of Buddhism, the 6 realms, that cosmology is directly tied to psychology, which is actually tonight Introduction to Buddhism's lecture topic. Buddhism really explains cosmology, as in the external universe as we experience it, is directly related to the internal universe that we have. So that pride manifests as the God realm, jealousy manifests as the demigod realm, desire manifests as the human realm, deluded ignorance manifests as the animal realm, greed manifests as the hungry ghost realm, anger manifests as the hell realm. So that's the correspondence between what's out there and what's in here. So here, therefore, among the 3 lower realms, the animals are inferior because they are greatly deluded. And how this great delusion manifests in the animals is basically, as a result of this delusion or not knowing, then all their actions, for most of it, is driven by instincts. Instincts of survival, instincts of reproduction, and all their actions are under the power of just instincts. Very hard, not impossible, we definitely have stories, that seems, we don't know exactly, but, many stories we have seen, how animals make choices that suggest that, they are thinking beyond themselves. And they're thinking of the group. But how much of that is compassion and love? Exactly, we don't know, but there's evidence. Then, not just like modern evidence, in the Jataka tales, of course, animals, there are special animals, like the four brothers, right? The 4 siblings that seem capable of reasoning, but very rare. Right? So continuing, the beings of the hell realms and hungry ghost realms have great temporary suffering. But because they remember their past lives, they regret their non-virtue, have compassion for others, and so on, and therefore it also happens that they quickly attain liberation. So apparently this is one of the characteristics, like beings born in the hell realm and in the hungry ghost realm, they actually retain memory of what they did in the previous life that led them to that existence, and so regret can arise more easily. Yeah. The animals do bad actions due to their strong ignorance, and due to the force of these actions may even go further down within the lower realms. Thus it is said in the close application of Mindfulness Sutra, it is acceptable to be born as a hell being, but it is not so for birth in the animal realm. For this reason, Jigten Sumgon instructed us that it is crucial to make effort in abandoning this ignorance or delusion. So again, you see, the point really is not about, is my cat or dog or turtle, in a good place or not in a good place. This is taught to human beings, saying, don't underestimate, don't think ignorance and delusion is okay. And again, then by extension, don't think, instincts of that sort. And you say, well, it's my human instinct, to protect myself. And it's my human instinct, to want to pass on my genes. So, it's really talking about, don't, as a human, behave in an animal way and give the excuse of like, oh, that's just, human nature. Well, it's human nature to, fight back. In this definition, you are behaving like an animal. You're giving into your, quote unquote, as we say, animal instincts. And if you behave like that, then you will be born even in the lower realm, and in the lower realm, and in the lower realm. So this is this main point here of 19. So Kyobpa Jigten Sumgon, did not make this statement, to indict animals. You are worse than hell beings, saying to the, yaks and the vultures flying around in Tibet, you are bad. He's not talking to animals, okay? He's talking to human beings, telling human beings, don't excuse your animalistic instincts and say, oh, well, this is just, even dogs do that, or things like that, Sometimes we say, oh, even dogs do that, or even mice do that, in a lab, mice would, do this, or that, Kyobpa Jigten Sumgon will say, hey, hello, you are a human being. There is some difference there. Then to close out this chapter, this is a long commentary. We should leave for tomorrow, Friday. This one is basically saying, Jigten Sumgon maintains that it is greater fault to not obtain the vows than to damage them. Oh, which is like, at first look, you're like, what? Almost everyone else says, don't take the vow if you cannot keep them, because then you are like a double fine. One fine is you break the rule. Second fine is, right, put like fine, like paying fines, like, what? You know it's wrong, and you, even though you know it's wrong and you did it, double fine. That's normally how we think of this. Normally, that's how we think of this. So we say, therefore, don't take the vow. Because you cannot keep it, don't take the vow. Jigten Sumgon says, you take the vow, you try your best to keep it. Yes, you're going to make mistakes, but it's better that way. Why? It's again based on the principle of the three poisons. Delusion is more dangerous. So by taking the vow, you dispel delusion, because taking vows is really about dispelling delusion. Right? It's saying, I'm taking this guideline to provide more clarity on how I should behave. So we will look at this principle in statement 20, the last statement of this chapter, tomorrow. I can say also briefly, like, yes, of course, then there are practical situations to think about. Like, do we literally take this statement? If literally we're taking this statement, then maybe this weekend we should organize, the ordination of monks and nuns for every single one of us. Then you're like, whoa, what about my husband? What about my wife? Well, see if they want to come take the ordination as well. Obviously, we're not saying that, Obviously, there is that practical side of things, which is, yeah, it's true. If you cannot, your circumstance is such that you're going to remain partner, and all of that. Yeah, no, don't take the vows, I would say don't take the vows, on that practical level. So verse 20, statement 20 is not to be kind of like blindly translated to, okay, let's make everyone monks and nuns. And then even as they break those vows, it's better for them. It's not literally saying that, okay, so don't overextend, I feel, this statement. This statement is talking about having a different relationship with the vows of training, the pratimoksha vows. So statement 20, I think, is a really important statement that helps us have a different relationship with the pratimoksha vows. So that will be for tomorrow.